Buenas noches, mi gente. This is Ray Collazo, and you're listening and watching to the Found in Translation Talk Show. The talk show that stacks truth about politics and today's hottest issues. This show is Ray Collazo. Catch me at _FIT Talk Show on social media. You're watching this as a video show on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, as a podcast, or you're listening to this as a podcast, anywhere you can download anywhere you can download a podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, a lot of my Pandora heads. So in between your Osuna and Nicky Jam, you can listen to Found in Translation on those live music streaming platforms, or in Philadelphia on terrestrial radio. You can listen to the Found in Translation Talk Show on WPPMLP 106.5 FM, hashtag People Powered Media. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Ray Collazo on Found in Translation. And this is the What I Didn't Say on MSNBC edition, because for my ride or dies that may have missed it, Sunday afternoon, February 16th, you're listening and watching to this shortly thereafter, but Sunday afternoon, February 16th, Ray Collazo, your host with the most, was blessed and is eternally grateful to Alicia Menendez, the newest host on the MSNBC roster, who now has a weekend show, which I predict is going to really rise in recognition and credibility in the coming months. So Alicia Menendez had me on her show along with a great group of other commentators and experts to talk politics, which is what we love to do here on a Found Translation show. So this special edition of the show is for everybody, of course, particularly our loyal podcast listeners that are day ones, but especially for those that may have never heard of the show or have had never an opportunity to watch or listen to Found in Translation and saw me on MSNBC and said, "The Puerto Rican guy's got a podcast? Let me check it out. Let me subscribe and download it." So if you're new to the Found in Translation experience, we really appreciate you and hope you get to stick around. Again, there's your host, Ray Collazo. So what I want to do on this special edition, it's a solo show, is do several things. One is I want to talk about everything I wasn't able to talk about on the show because, it's an hour. It's an ensemble cast. There's commentators and reporters calling in and, from Nevada and throughout the country, lots of issues going on. So my comments, I did touch on sort of the horse race with presidential politics and a few other issues, but obviously there's only so much time when you're part of an ensemble cast that way. But nevertheless, we did get some stuff in. So I want to expound on a few things and kind of give you all, as of February 16th, going into February 17th, depending when you're listening or watching this, kind of where we're at here, going into the Nevada Caucus, Super Tuesday, and sort of et al., the presidential horse race. I did want to talk about, sort of make some notes around, what's at stake for particularly Latinos in our country with this election. And also give people sort of an inside scoop. I'm getting a lot of questions online from friends, from family. I'm getting texts. How was it being on television? How was it being on MSNBC? How was Alicia Menendez? How was the experience of being at 30 Rockefeller Center, one of the historical altars for media and television in this country, being there, sharing our perspective, the Found in Translation, because it's not just me. It's the Found in Translation's family perspective on these issues. So so I want to give people at the end of the show just a little behind the curtain about what we're talking about. And again, this is Ray Collazo. Thank you again if you're new to the Found in Translation experience and the Found in Translation podcast. Again, you can check out, if you're interested in a video and you're listening to the podcast, say, "Well, I'd like to keep watching this guy." You can watch us on YouTube at Ray's Podcast. Ray's Podcast was the former moniker of the show until very recently. So if you go on YouTube and you type in Ray's Podcast, or Ray's Latino Talk Podcast, you can find our YouTube channel. So again, thank you so much for joining us. So really quickly, if you've never heard of me or you're new to this experience, I wanted to quickly introduce myself. So my name is Ray Collazo. You'll also see in my personal Facebook and my other professional life, my name is Rafael Collazo. And a very quick story. My name is Rafael Collazo. Rafael Palmieri Collazo. Palmieri, for you salsa heads, you know what that's about. For others, we'll get into that another time. But I call myself Ray on my show and in my sort of social media life for a couple of reasons. One is that it's a note to my father, who is and was a broadcaster and still is a broadcaster. And it's sort of my way of tipping my hat to him for the blessing of the love of this genre, but also it has helped me in my professional career also sort of provide a little distance from my day job. By day, I am the political director for a national Hispanic civil rights organization. So that's been a big part of my journey to sort of have this sort of holistic national perspective on politics from a Latino lens. So I've had the opportunity through this position and many others throughout my professional career to be able to work with Latino leaders on the ground and sort of get dirty, get my hands dirty in political campaigns, voter registration, get out the vote, issue campaigns from coast to coast. And you'll particularly hear a lot of my commentary from a lot of the sexy electoral states. I've done a lot of work in the swing states, the Floridas, the Arizonas, the Nevadas, increasingly more the Colorados, the Texas, and my home state of Pennsylvania. In terms of my personal background, I'm a Philly Rican. So I'm someone that was born and raised in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which, until I guess fairly recently has become more visibly known nationally as sort of a hub of a significant Latino population. When I was growing up in Philly, not so much, but grew up in a very sort of segregated, smaller Latino community in a very large city, and had the opportunity to sort of live a very Latino existence as an inner city kid in a community that wasn't necessarily macro level very big. So in my small world, it was very Latino. And so, and particularly very Puerto Rican. And so I carry that along. So if you see in my content, a healthy amount of Puerto Rican specific content and Puerto Rican commentators, it's partially my personal background, partially because of my particular care for what's happened, not only to the island of Puerto Rico over the last several years, but also because of my personal network and organizing career. I have had in particular a blessing and opportunity to work with not only Latino leaders, but more specifically Puerto Rican leaders throughout the diaspora. And so my network includes a lot of Puerto Ricans from some of the traditional Northeast communities, the Chicago community, of course, the emerging Florida community, and others throughout the country. We just had a Puerto Rican from New Hampshire on the show as an example. But we work with everybody and have actually changed the name recently to Found in Translation to reflect a more, kind of a more inclusive, diverse conversation. So having more non-Latinos on the show and people from different perspectives and backgrounds to be part of our conversations. I normally have sort of guests and co-hosts, but again, today there's a special episode because I was just on MSNBC and I figure there may be some new people that are going to join our experience here. And I wanted to kind of quickly get up an episode to kind of introduce myself and let people know where we were coming from. So because of my national work, and because I'm still based physically in the Philadelphia area, and because of my voracious interest in connecting with leadership and around the country and sort of, kind of having a couple toes in the hood, still, I bring to you sort of kind of a beltway knowledge base of what's happening with politics, with sort of my connections with people around the country, and try to give it to you straight. Try to give it to you in a way that's keeps it real and is relatable to people, whether you're a political geek like me that sits around watching basic cable all day, or sort of comes in and out of politics, but is a sharp cookie and wants to understand the real deal and something that you're kind of gonna get. You're not going to get that much of in mainstream media most of the time. Certainly not the nuanced information about how the Latino community fits into the bigger puzzle. So again, this is Ray Collazo, Found in Translation. Thank you again for joining us on the podcast or the TV show. If anyone saw the show, by the way, on MSNBC, feel free to reach out to me on social media, whether you're a friend or someone that doesn't know me or an acquaintance. Let me know. _ at fit FIT, like Found in Translation. Get it? _ talk show, fit _ talk show on IG or Twitter. Let me know what you thought. If you got a copy of it, you took a picture of the Chiron, any information is always helpful. So now I'd like to talk about what I wasn't able to kind of fully spit out on the show because we're limited on time. It was a great experience. And again, later in the show, we'll talk about sort of the inside of the moment, but I wanted to share with y'all a little bit of what's happening here from my perspective. So in terms of Nevada, let's start there because that's what's coming up on Saturday. The caucus is Saturday. And I think with the exception of South Carolina, which is a little bit more up in the air, and probably a little bit because of the demographics does lean a little bit more for even a Biden or not necessarily, a Bernie victory at the very least. I think unless something significantly changes in the amount of candidates, I think what you saw in the first two states is basically what's going to happen here on out. Again, with the exception of some of the African-American dominant voting states, Democratic voting states in the Deep South. is basically Bernie's got this base of 25 to 30, maybe a little bit more. That ain't going nowhere. That's with him. That's been solidified from the last, since the last cycle, that he solidified through organizing and sort of this consistent drumbeat. And frankly, his pretty strong performance as a candidate the last 3 months or so. And I think where you're going to see what you saw in New Hampshire and Iowa is basically what you're going to get. I think he's going to win Nevada with about 25% plus of the poll. And, I think the behind him will be pretty jumbled. I personally don't believe in a Buttigieg bump the way others do. I think he's had a presence on the ground for some time, but you can't compare. There's a lot of people who've had a presence on the ground for some time. Warren's got some support in Nevada. Biden, and I've been talking to my folks on the ground over this weekend, and actually maybe I'm a little more optimistic about Biden maybe finishing second than I would have been even a couple days ago. There is some brand loyalty there, and despite the fact that his field operations have been uneven, he might be able to squeeze out a second. I think the culinary union, not only throwing some shade at Sanders and kind of by proxy Warren, because she also supports Medicare for all, but not endorsing Biden, which would have been the obvious next step. He's Mr. Labor, working man, got the gravitas, the connection with Obama, and sort of just staying out of it. To me, in my estimation, to me, that's saying they believe that Biden is not a very strong candidate at this point, and is not, even with their endorsement, would not finish first. They're not going to put their bets on someone that's going to lose, and that portends to what may happen in South Carolina next week. But we'll talk about that next week. So, in short, with Nevada, I think it's basically going to be Bernie with a whole bunch of people jumbled up. Steyer is got a little something going on in Nevada, believe it or not. And he also has a little something in South Carolina as well. So I could see a scenario where 2 through 6 is like all within a point or two, really jumbled up. And unless Buttigieg takes a bump up more than I would expect, which is possible, I don't think him finishing close to Bernie is by any means automatic. So we're going to see what happens. But this gets in my big picture, what's going on. And I've been saying on the show, again, for people new to the show, thank you for joining Found in Translation. I've been saying on the show since the Iowa caucus, and nothing has changed in my estimation, is we're down to 3 people here. We're down to Sanders, Buttigieg, and Bloomberg. And it's really, to me, Sanders, Bloomberg, Buttigieg, definitely still in the game, because Bloomberg could collapse the way Biden has been collapsing slowly. And I say that to say that I think macro picture, on some level, this is almost a game of chicken. And this is why I say that, is that what's going to happen here is after March 2nd, Sanders is going to be in the lead after March 2nd, because he's going to get the same that he's getting in California, in Texas. California only gets better for him because he's one of the few people that has the money to be competitive, and he's invested a lot in engaging, particularly younger Latino voters. And so, that 25, 30%, especially in a more diverse state, in a woker state, in a more, there's no reason California is a good state for Bernie, ideologically and positioning wise. So I think he's going to get in those bigger states and throughout all those states, in the aggregate, he's going to get 25 to 30%. He's going to win most of the states with a relatively unimpressive win number, but he's still going to win them. And the rest are going to be sort of jumbled up. Now, the only question is, does either Buttigieg in that scenario, which is possible because I have enough money to be competitive, have enough steam and enough organization and enough money to quickly put together a good enough effort on the ground to come out as a consensus number 2? I think that remains to be seen. Or does Bloomberg's brand and money so powerful that in these 2 more weeks, he doesn't run out of time and is able to snatch a second or a couple second places, or at least enough second thirds to kind of be there toe to toe with a Buttigieg, where he could potentially knock him out with money and sort of wear him out as we go along and get everybody knocked out of the race. Or, so if everybody sticks around, if a Warren and maybe a Klobuchar or a Biden or Steyer, or, if we still have 4 or 5 candidates at the March 2nd, that portends very well for Bernie, because the moderate lane's still pretty crowded. Buttigieg probably at that point will still look pretty viable to a lot of people, and will be in probably reality with a jumbled field. And Bernie will be in the lead with even more momentum after 5 or 6 victories, whatever it ends up being. Or after Super Tuesday, even before Super Tuesday, maybe even going into Super Tuesday, 1 or 2 fall off. Do some of the moderates get out the way? Do a Biden and Klobuchar pack it up and provide an opportunity for Bloomberg to collect some of their voters and build some momentum to leapfrog Mayor Pete Buttigieg? On the flip side, does Elizabeth Warren, who there's no one I have more sympathy for in this process. Elizabeth Warren has run a very good campaign. Elizabeth Warren, put a gun on my head, with the people that are left, would probably be my preferred choice. But Elizabeth Warren's done. And I don't say that out of, liking that or understanding completely understanding the reasons for it. I think the more I think about it, I think her campaign, supporting very early on in this process, Medicare for All really did not work for her at all, because she looked like she was following, which she tended is not to do in this process. She tends to be the leader a lot of times, whether it was calling on impeachment or other things. And how she rolled out the follow was clunky, and it gave some people cover to support actually where her support meant, which was more Buttigieg and other moderate options, which to me sounds questionable. But that's another story for another time. My point is that I believe in the polling. The polling's been pretty consistent, this late polling in these states, and I think she's pretty much where she's at. She's at 12 to 15% everywhere. So that's going to continue. After March 2nd, that means she's really not viable anymore. And so my question is, and I think the key to this whole race at this point is, does Elizabeth Warren, after Super Tuesday, and I think she'd have to do it pretty immediately after Super Tuesday, for this to be effective, does she play kingmaker and throw support to Bernie Sanders? And that coalition really is a real thing. And I'm not just saying one press event, I'm supporting Bernie, I'm dropping out. I'm talking about Bernie and Elizabeth really making it clear that this is a package deal. Whether that's, her being the VP, which I don't really think. I think, honestly, she'd probably rather be Secretary of Treasury, and I'd rather her be Secretary of Treasury. But there has to be a real clear, I need to see AOC on stage together with Julian. I need to see that coalition together in a way of solidarity and really couch this for what it is. And what it should be is that for us to combat oligarchs like Trump and Bloomberg, and for us to really mobilize the true base of this party, where the energy is, where the passion is, where the base is, where the people that are going to put us over the top exist and are going to knock on that extra door in their community, because they really see this election as a literal and figurative existential threat to our democracy, but our communities. That's really the coalition we have to build, the coalition that has brought Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders into prominence in this race. The moderates, at the end of the day, if they're not going to choose these Democratic candidates, which, are not nefarious, okay, maybe Bernie's a little too left for you and Warren's too left for you, but you're gonna choose, you would rather choose Trump over someone that's a little left of you ideologically, then you're probably not going to vote for the Democrats anyway. So I believe we have to go with the energy. I think we have to go with the people power, because Bloomberg is not the people power. And frankly, Buttigieg, I think he's a sharp guy who I generally like. He has a great future. I'm glad he's around. I give him props for the run he's made. At the end of the day, because he's coming out of nowhere, he's going to be beholden to all these people that are funding him, because he is going to wine caves and is taking donations from billionaires. So, he's not going to, he'd be competent, but he's not going to move the needle in the way that we want and we deserve. So if Warren, after Super Tuesday, immediately jumps over to Bernie while the moderates still fight it out, And even if you end up with 3 people, which I think is probably going to be the scenario, kind of a Bloomberg, Buttigieg, Sanders, then that gives Sanders the space and the time to sort of build up enough of a lead where Bloomberg couldn't just buy his way in. The other dynamic is, Bloomberg on some levels like a backup quarterback. And for people that don't follow sports, one of the funny things that people talk about as sports fans and football fans is that everybody loves the backup quarterback. Oh, bring him in. This idea that anyone can be better than the starter. And then when the backup quarterback comes in, 9 times out of 10, you realize why he's the backup. He's inconsistent, and he's not as good as you thought. And that, to me, is how I'm thinking the Bloomberg piece could play out. Is it possible he shows up at this debate on Wednesday, and that's to be determined as of the time I'm releasing the show, recording the show, so we don't know. He may or may not be there Wednesday, depending on what final polls come out for eligibility purposes. I mean, what if he comes off worse than Biden? What if the 2 progressives and a Biden and a Klobuchar just bang on him for an hour and he's flustered? He looks bad. Wow, he's short. Well, I didn't realize he was that racist. Wow, he's awkward. Oh, I didn't realize he was that old. The blooms off this flower could come off very fast. So if I were Sanders, if I was Buttigieg, if I was Biden, I'd be crossing my fingers he gets on the debate stage, because early exposure could be the only thing that could stop him, because he's paying everybody off, fam. I don't know what y'all hearing, and I talked about this a little bit on the show, but I mean, someone else on the show, when we were off camera, confirmed that he knew someone like I do that's getting paid $50,000 a month by Bloomberg. And all these African-American politicians and Mayor Villaraigosa and all these other Latinos that are with him, the elected officials, I ain't mad at the workers. Field people, hey, political professionals, we got to get paid. We got to pay off mortgages. I can, give those people a pass. But these elected officials, they already got status and know that it's wrong to support this man. I don't got no love for that. So I'm gonna be calling on, including my former mayor Nutter and others, Mayor Bowser in D.C. and former Mayor Webb in Denver. Ese plata, papa. Ese plata. We know what that's about. He's not the best candidate for the black community. Give me a break. So that's where we're at. I'm not even sure if it's not too late for Bloomberg. Okay, commercials, but 40% of the people are going to vote in 2 weeks. Is that enough time? I don't know. We'll see. I don't think he's going to win many states. Could finish second. But it's a weird thing, because in the same way Buttigieg and Klobuchar are blocking Biden, Buttigieg, maybe Klobuchar, but, or just that stack of moderates might divvy up Bloomberg's share just enough to hold them off. It'll be very interesting. You're listening to Ray Collazo on the Found in Translation Talk Show. Either watching, we appreciate you watching, whether it's on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or listening as a podcast, or on WPPMOP 106.5 in Philadelphia, hashtag People Powered Media. Thank you for joining us. If you like what you're hearing, you're like, this guy bringing something to the table here. We really appreciate it if you subscribe. Rank, rate, and review, particularly if you're on iTunes. If you had Apple products, it really helps. It would really help if we got more recommendations. We got a lot of love on social media. I get DMs. I get Facebook messages. I get a lot of great feedback for the show, and not only myself, but if you're new to the experience, we have always wonderful people on the show. Political leaders, community leaders. We talk about a lot of issues. I'm going to be doing a special series on autism awareness. We have a woman on the show, Christina Vega, that is our specialist around how we support victims of domestic violence. So we get into a lot of personal issues. Also, we mix in sort of today's issues. We got a great group, mostly of women, that help me host the show sort of on a rotating basis. Dionelli Reyes, Vanessa Maria Graber, Christina Vega, Yaya Rivera, my homie Albert Garcia, my homeboy Abe Amaros, Damaris Vega, Lady D. A lot of good people help me with the show. And we want to continue to sort of foster introducing you to more great leaders and personalities and people with a lot to say on Found in Translation. Get it? You're not lost here. But if you're trying to figure out how this whole Latino thing fits in and diversity and trying to keep it real with, what's happening in the world, but not. Ray, help me out here. I got you. I got your back. Thank you again for joining us. Really quickly, before I touch on my experience, there really is a lot on line on this election. And, 2 things came to mind in thinking about headlines. One, if people saw last week, there was a high school basketball game between two Catholic schools in California. And at the end of the game, because there was 4 players on the court that either had accents or were identified as foreign, somehow through the course of the game, the opposing team, as the game ended, chanted, "Show us your passports." Turns out that one of the players was from France, and 3 of them were from Puerto Rico, of all places, 6,000 miles away from California, I think. And it just, again, in a parochial school, in a Christian, a religious institution setting. So my question to the administration is, what are you doing at that school at St. Joseph's in California to address that? That's my question. But it speaks to the kind of atmosphere that our young people around the country and people of color and people that are perceived as different are dealing with on a day-to-day basis in this atmosphere of hate and division. The second thing, which is even more serious, is ICE has announced that they are going to deploy, quote-unquote, elite units in sanctuary cities. Many of the cities in inner city America and urban America, which are run politically by Democrats that are very diverse and are immigrant-friendly communities. And it just shows that, that's the Gestapo stuff, folks. In 2016, I remember after Trump won, I went on my homie Nikki G's show, and I spoke much about it on Found in Translation. And I said, this is how Nazism started. The intolerant talk, followed by sort of this gradual whittling of our norms around the judiciary, how we treat the least fortunate, and how we had people that are identified as the other are slowly dehumanized, and people accept this sort of treatment. What have we seen since 2016? Literally children snatched from their mothers and their families, some of which will never be reunited with their parents. Essentially being tortured, whether you want to call it cages, and babies being incarcerated in inhumane conditions. And now we're going to send in elite units into communities, fostering fear, fostering terrorism, fostering danger. And I've said it many times, and I know that there's people that work at ICE that this is not what they signed up for. I understand that. But the reality is the reality of it. Let's keep it real. Because those people are doing what the president says, they're more a threat to the immigrants, even if they're trying to cross the border in an undocumented fashion, or they're applying for asylum, which most of them are doing, or trying to do it through a legal process. They're more danger to those immigrants than the other way around. And we know that because statistically, 7 or 8 of them have died in custody over the last few years. 1 can happen, 2, but over that, and we don't know how many have been sexually abused, how many have been physically assaulted, and much less the mental trauma and the emotional scars that these young people and these family members, I can't imagine not being away from my, being separated from my children. So that's what's at stake at this election. And for those moderates that are, flirting with Klobuchar, flirting with Biden, for Bloomberg, because you know what? One way or another, I don't like the guy, but it's not we don't need big changes. Sorry, we can't prioritize that mentality. We got to prioritize the mentality to really see what this is, an existential threat to our democracy and our way of life in this country. And finally, a little bit of my experience at MSNBC. Again, I was honored, blessed to be on the Alicia Menendez Show on MSNBC on Sunday afternoon. So if you have to find it online, I was on from 4 to 5. It's a great conversation. People like Maria Urbina from Indivisible, Rashad Robinson, very celebrated civil rights activist from Color of Change, Laura Bassett, Charlotte Alter, great group of people. And, hey, this is 30 Rock, fam. I mean, this is a big. We're Saturday Night Live. They taping, Brian Williams and all these people. I mean, it was intimidating. And I did stress about it. I got the call Valentine's Day evening. And I live in New Jersey, closer to Philadelphia, but very reasonable distance to get to New York City on a Sunday afternoon. And, I stressed about it a little bit over the weekend, but want to really thank family and friends really coached me up, got me hyped, built up my confidence, and really was really and Alicia's team, her team, her producers were just outstanding. And as I shared in my Facebook Live, the makeup and hair was by far the highlight. I mean, wow, look, my hair still looks good. And the pampering was quite lovely. It's like I understand the difference between what they say in like college sports and the major league sports, whether that's football or basketball in particular. It's the speed. There's definitely a pace. There's definitely a rhythm. And I think, I think the curve definitely was a little shorter than it would have been if we hadn't been doing the podcast over the last several months on video. And you sort of, you get a little better sense of kind of that mental clock around how to be, punchy. So felt good about it overall. It was a wonderful experience. Again, the biggest thing I got out of it, again, for those that don't know me and for people that know me or familiar with the show or not, is that, while it was a fantastic experience from the perspective of being on the show and the adrenaline of that and the opportunity and the exposure, but the greatest experience was the kind of positive support, love, and reinforcement I got from not only family, friends, but our extended Found in Translation community. So, you got to understand that we not only have to live in gratefulness, but we also have to understand this is about, in my case, me. It's really about this platform being an opportunity for not only myself to express a perspective about a community's perspective that we generally don't hear much about. People from the inner city, people of Latino descent, Puerto Ricans throughout the diaspora, and sort of melding my collective experiences in a way that all of us can relate to, but also to introduce my co-hosts and the other talents and the other leaders that I bring to the table around the country. And so Alicia Menendez is doing that in kind. So you may have seen over social media, Maida Macias, who was on the show yesterday, or Maria Rubina's commenting and highlighting the fact that Alicia Menendez quickly got on the ground. This is the second weekend she's at the show. And she's already bringing on people like myself and Maida and Maria and Rashad and others. Gabriela Domenzine, I think I saw on the show the other day. So, bringing on other diverse voices, voices that, until maybe months ago, literally weren't getting a lot of opportunities on being able to share their stuff, show us what you got. So much respect to Alicia Menendez, much respect to the MSNBC folks that treated me like a VIP. It was a lot of fun and definitely, a life lesson about a lot of things bigger than politics, frankly. So thank you so much for listening and watching the Found in Translation Talk Show. The talk show stacks true, fam. I'm going to keep it real. I keep it real like I kept it real. Hey, it's one thing to keep it real on here. It's another to keep it real on MSNBC. Basic cable, big time stuff, people. NBC, owned by Comcast in Philly, by the way. They connect. Speaking truth to power and keeping it real on there is a whole other conversation. So I think I did a good job. I got great feedback. People like Patricia Campos and others who are definitely the wokest with the mostest. They said I kept it real. So I'm in good standing with our Poderosas. So I'm doing okay. Thank you again for joining the Found Translation Experience. If you want to keep up what we're doing, please subscribe, download the podcast. Anywhere you can download the podcast. Check us out on the radio in Philadelphia on WPPMLP 106.5 FM. And on the video, in our video archives for past episodes or current episodes, we not only have the show on YouTube, so definitely you can check out the shows, but I do the show generally, almost always, Thursdays, 8 to 9 o'clock Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. So if you want to watch the show live, you can jump on the show on video, you can comment, you can be part of the live chat. We have a very interactive program live. Just probably the easiest way for you to find us is either go to Ray's Podcast on Facebook or on Twitter. Go to our Twitter handle, and the show is live on Periscope. So on Twitter. So FIT_talk show. It's on the Chiron for the video watchers. And you can check us out 8 o'clock Eastern on Thursday. I'm going to be in Nevada this week for a couple of days. So most likely what's going to happen is I will tape a show while I'm on the ground in Vegas represent in the 702, so I can really give you some flavor of what's happening in the community leading up to the caucus. And I will air that show on Thursday evening, or maybe I'll do a live show. We're trying to figure out the kinks, but definitely just keep an eye on us. We're going to be giving you we're going to be talking to leadership on the ground in the community in Las Vegas. It's going to be a really exciting week for the Latino community. You know, Latino leaders are going to Vegas this week like we go to the Canelo Alvarez fights. We're going to be in the house this week in the great state, the Silver State. So there's going to be a lot of energy on the ground that we want to share with you all, kind of be a window to some of the history taking place in Las Vegas and Southern Nevada this week leading up to the Nevada Caucus. Thank you so much, family. Thank you for all the support for my MSNBC appearance. I appreciate any feedback from what I didn't get to say on MSNBC, which you got to hear exclusively on Found in Translation, and have a wonderful one.